page 69. Please join us.
Good morning, everyone. Happy Father's Day today to all of the fathers here. It's our great pleasure and privilege to have with us today Swami Shantatmanandaji, long-time head of the Ramakrishna Mission in New Delhi, and now head of the new center in Gurugram, the Vivekananda Institute of Values. Huh, Maharaj? Yeah. And he gave a wonderful explanation last night. We had satsang last night about some of the work that they're doing there and the educational programs, all according to Swamiji's ideal about manifestation of the perfection already within man. It was wonderful. And it's on YouTube. So for those who didn't get to see it last night, you can go to our website and see that. So Swamiji's having a whirlwind tour. He's here just for this morning. He'll leave for his next place in the afternoon. We're very, very happy that he took time out to come and stay with us. I know the Swami since when he was just a young brahmachari. And he just recently joined when he was in our headquarters in Belur. He was there for many years. So very, very happy that Swami Shantatmanandaji can be here with us. He'll be speaking today on Swami Vivekananda, a rare blend of the human and divine.
ओम असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मा अमृतंगमय ओम शांति 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 स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः। जननीं शारदां देवीं रामकृष्णं जगद्गुरुं पादपद्मे तयो श्रित्वा प्रणमामि मुहुर्मुहुः। नमः श्री यतिराजाय विवेकानंद सूर्ये सच्चित् सुख स्वरूपाय स्वामिने तापहारिणे। Our dear Swami Atmagyananandaji, Swami Bhaspatanandaji, and the assembled devotees, it's a rare privilege to talk about Swami Vivekananda, although it's a very, very, very difficult subject, because he was so vast, so infinite, so to say. So how to sum up his personality in a short talk like this? But yet, whatever we do, it gives us great joy and happiness. So let us make a very humble effort, because he was such a myriad-minded, multifaceted personality. Those who are familiar with his life, the details, they have some idea about his divine nature. Because Ramakrishna himself said that, not he just said, he had a spiritual vision that one of the rishis in the Saptarshi Mandala, deeply immersed in dhyana, at the call, at the request of Sri Ramakrishna, who himself was a small child of that Akhanda Sachidananda, who had taken the shape of a small divine child. At the request of the child, he came down on earth. So in a way, that was his kind of origin. And then later on, Sri Ramakrishna once asked him, how do you go to sleep? He thought that's how all children sleep. He says, the moment I lie down, a small speck of light appears between the eyebrows. It soon becomes bigger and bigger, takes the form of a huge ball of light, and completely engulfs his whole personality. And that's how I go to sleep. So you can imagine. So Thakur said, you are a dhyana siddha. There are many instances, many in his life, through which we get a small glimpse of his divine nature, because they are not arranged chronologically the way I narrate them to you, but you can just relate very easily. Once in Belur, in the famous mango tree, which is there even now, sometimes in the mornings he would just relax in an easy chair, and the monastics would gather around him and he would be holding a class. On a particular day he was in such a mood, it was supremely elevating. At that time the new temple was not there. So at the old temple, Swami Premananda was carrying the plate, the Pushpa Patra, and he was going up the stairs to worship. So Swamiji simply said, "Here is Brahman." And he was transfixed. He couldn't take a step forward. Almost some 40 or 45 minutes later, then by the time Swamiji's mood had come down a little, he waved his hand, and then only he could go and worship. That was his divinity, that was his power. But simply by his mere sight, by mere a word, he could transform people. Such power he wielded. And many other instances how in probably 1000 Park, somewhere towards the end, one day just he came down, he came out and he sat under a tree and he was immersed in samadhi. And it started raining. He had no idea. People came running with umbrellas. And after a long time, suddenly he opened his eyes and saw there was a puddle of water all around. So he could go into samadhi just at will. That was his divinity, his power. And there are several instances where he had to make an effort to stay at the level of body consciousness. In the West, he was about to go for a lecture. He was standing before a huge mirror, because there are different versions with minor variations. Basically, the essence is the same. He was adjusting his coat button and turban or something. And then the hostess thought, this is the person who talks about Brahman all the time and is rooted in the idea of body. Like a lightning came Swamiji's answer. So you have to go and lecture. I'm trying hard to get into the idea of this body consciousness. That was his nature. He himself and Swami Shivananda were lying side by side on a bed. Suddenly Shivananda saw it was a huge ball of light as if engulfing the entire area. He just got out of the bed and he saw small, there's a palm of Shiva in Kashi called Batuk Shiva. They were just going round Swamiji. Swamiji was sleeping. A tremendous glow of light. So there are many instances how he could, by a mere wish, he could transform people, perhaps alter the consciousness of the whole nation as it were, when he came back, when he awakened India. And how he could just read other people's mind. That famous singer, Emma Calvé, she had attempted suicide several times. Finally, somebody said, there's an Indian yogi, with great difficulty she got an appointment. When she came, Swamiji was sitting in a room. He was deeply immersed in a meditative mood. She came in, he didn't even look at her. One after another, he started telling incidents of her life which she had not confided even to her closest friends. And at the end of it, he said, "My child, why do you carry about you such an aura of sadness and loss of peace? Start singing again. Be happy. From that day, she said it was a completely, a different, totally new life for her, so to say. Not only that, even long after he had quit this world, that type of incidents. Once I was in a program, myself and she was quite a well-established lady. She was a psychologist or something like that. She was a speaker before me. And she said, today Swamiji is here. I am going to share an incident which I have not told anybody so far. So she had married, and her only son was a disabled child, so to say, I think spastic or something. Some very serious problem. But her husband wouldn't understand, and the marriage was in a mess, and she was very much troubled. Then she quit that marriage. Of course, by the time when she saw me at the time, she said he is well established. She had worked out something wonderful for that son of hers, and he was doing very well. But at that time he said, I went with few of my friends to Belur Math. I was sitting behind Swamiji's temple, facing the Ganges. I had just closed my eyes, and suddenly I felt a tap on my shoulder. And I looked around, and I saw Swamiji standing. And she said, from that day, my life changed completely. So, that he was very extraordinary, his divine nature was known to people, to many of you also who have gone through his life, the details. But then, knowing those details is entirely different. How do we really appreciate, can we understand his depth or dimension? Perhaps very, very difficult. So, yet Swamiji is so endearing, people are able to relate to him, more so in the West. In India also, many come to the mission, they get introduced because they are attracted by Swamiji's personality, not so much by his divinity, rather by his apparent humanness. His deep love, his compassion, his love for India, his love for poor, the way he would deal with people. Somehow, at least we imagine that we can relate to Swamiji. We feel that after all, he is our own. So, of course, he also had a human appearance like all of us. He also had the same genes, human genes. He could go thunderously angry at people. He can be extremely impatient. He loved ice cream. He loved a special kind of sauce in the West. And all these things were very much there, part of his life. But was his humanness same as that of you and me? Probably that is what we would like to understand or go into a little more detail in the next few minutes. It's available to us. He was deeply hurt when someone deserted him, when there was treachery, when people were, suddenly they turned antagonistic him, his own disciples. He seemed to be hurt very deeply. Particularly if you recall the incidents with Swami Abhayananda or Sturdy or Muller, some of these people, his exchange of letters with Sturdy is really that would move you the way he was writing. And of course, finally he silenced him. But then he seemed to be really deeply hurt by such incidents when people really moved away from him. Seems once probably in 1899, he was staying in Ridgely Manor. And at the time, Nivedita and Mrs. Bull were also there. So he came down, probably for a smoke or something. Incidentally, he used to smoke, and he was And he said, the last 2 years have been extremely painful, one after another, the incidents that happened. He said, as a monk, he was completely okay, all right. He was perfect. But yet, he seemed to be deeply pained by such incidents. He said, I completely feel the protection of Sri Ramakrishna as far as work is concerned. Because he knew that he had come down on earth just to help Sri Ramakrishna in his mission. So he felt deeply protected in his work. But he said, whatever is personal seemed to turn to ashes. So, then a little afterwards, Mrs. Bull came to Nivedita's room and they were talking for about an hour. And Nivedita writes in a letter, probably to someone else, Christine and someone, Mrs. Bull was almost in tears. So, these such incidents, one after another, particularly during those 2 years, they seemed to pain him so much. But then, was it the pain which any normal person like you and I would feel? Someone from the West, who is a very great writer of Swamiji, he says it is like a tainted glass. There are so many colors, so many scenes. A brilliant sunshine, the rays of sun are passing through such a glass. They seem to become incandescent or alive, those scenes. But in reality, it's the brilliance of the sun that is shining through those glass pieces, so to say. So, whatever might have been his condition, none of the letters which people like Nivedita or Christine or somebody wrote, you cannot miss what they observed about Swamiji. The radiance, his glow, even when he was deeply affected, deeply sorrowful, that seemed to say something else about his personality. Normally, all of us suffer pain, this, that, largely because all our emotions, all our feelings, etc., are all linked so much to our ego. But Swamiji, in his case, it seemed to be, ego is totally erased. He felt all that it looked like, but it was absolutely of a different order, of a different level, so to say. Similarly, if you look at the relationships he had formed, because he had love for everybody, the entire nation, in fact, even the whole of the West, he said that India or no other nation can have any claim on me. In the sense he belonged to the entire world, as it were. He seemed to love the entire humanity. Somebody says, I have fallen in love with man, meaning humanity. So, yet, you could see that he had very special kind of relationships with some people, where again we see a kind of trace of humanness in his behavior or in his relationships. He was like a very dear brother to the Hale sisters. The whole family was so dear to him. And with the sisters Mary and Harriet, he used to joke, he used to argue with them, and they would also feel so happy, like a true brother. Imagine, someone from the East, totally, it's such a cultural difference or whatever it is, yet they all felt so close to him. In fact, he writes once to Mary, please tell that person, the one who married Harriet, tell him he has got the sister, but has not yet paid the brother. It's because of the queer-looking black person standing in a corner and smoking who drove the other suitors away. So my dues are yet to be paid. That kind of a letter he wrote. And how much he had talked to them, argued with them, and it was as an extraordinary exhibition of a relationship as a brother. Mary Hale, how it started. she was the person who really, gave him a place in America, so to say. He was just in the streets, so to say. And she brought him in, and then that's how his American journey started. She was truly like a mother to him. She would care about his dress, the shade of his cloth, his collars, whether he is taking care of all that. And then, when he couldn't count money, he would simply come and dump them. She will count, she will keep track, all that. Again a mother, but slightly different, sometimes chiding him, sometimes scolding him, was Mrs. Bull. Very tempestuous relationship, you can say. You can read some of his letters to her. Thou art the right, thou art the wrong, thou Shiva. He writes to her. Because she used to advise him how he should behave in the society, how he should not offend people, and so on and so forth. But yet he writes, she is more dear to me than my own mother. And just for a hair of her, I can give my entire blood, he writes. And yet, when she wrote that he should be a little more considerate and compassionate to his own brother monks, he thundered, I hate this love. I wish there is no bhakti in my heart. It is his weakness that has brought me all the way to America in search of some help for people whom I love. And here I am, I have lost all peace. So, so all this, how do you, again, as a true father, if you look at that, his relationship with Nivedita, again, he could be extremely harsh, and the amount of scoldings he had given her, I don't think how many of us can really withstand. But yet, he had shown her that extraordinary spiritual uplift also. I think perhaps in somewhere during their Himalayan wanderings, one day he scolded so much. Someone else intervened, so to say, that he had been too harsh. Then he said, I'll go away for a few days. When I come back, I'll bring peace. And then before going, he blessed. That day, she had a transcendental experience, Nivedita. She says, I have never ever meditated like that in my life. So he could also give. But same time, he was. With Christine, it was a different type of fatherly relationship. He would care so much for her. He would be so anxious. Sometimes, if she doesn't reply, he would keep on writing letters, even before receiving one letter from her. He sent money for her, so to say. He would advise you go and stay for a few days for rest with Mrs. Bull or somebody, all that. So, the relationship with Swamiji, perhaps all these, how would you understand these relationships? How would you describe them? Probably, even in the Bhakti tradition, when you speak of relationship with God, one must have some, these are the Santadasya, Sakya, Mathura, all those kinds of relationship. The same way, perhaps these were the ways in which God would relate to a human being. The modes of love, as father, as brother, as a guru, all that. Perhaps it was an exhibition of all those forms of modes of relationship that he was trying to convey. That's how spontaneously they found expression in his life. So, while we, again and again, we try to say that these are all the ways in which you could find humanness in Swamiji. When you again and again explore deeply, perhaps we get completely lost. What kind of humanness was it? Because his love was something absolutely unconditional, without expecting anything, only giving. Even those people who deserted him, how much he cared for them. Long afterwards also you would find out, oh, poor thing, he has gone away or she has gone away. So he was really worried about them also. Because particularly in those relationships, why they deserted or what happened, probably because Because you see, in the case of Sturdy, he did so much damage to the work, the British work or the work in London. Because after coming back from London, Swamiji said, my work in London is much more stable. The Britishers, once they accept, they really stick to it. But the damage was so much, when he went a second time, there was none even to receive him. Nivedita had to come all the way from Ireland to greet him. So naturally it was very bad, but still he was absolutely forgiving in that sense. Then some of the, perhaps one reason for some of these people deserting Swamiji was, it was very difficult to be molded by Swamiji. Only people made of such kind of material, like Sister Nivedita, who could withstand that, because in all these cases, it was a total transformation. Giving up all that one possessed, all the tendencies, all the traits, all the angularities, when such a chiseling, such molding happens, it was too much for some of them, and they could not withstand it. And perhaps that was one reason why they went away. Because in his case, see, it was not like any ordinary guru giving some mantra or giving some spiritual instruction or something like that. Here it was a total transformation of the personality and leading to a clear spiritual uplift at the end of it. So imagine, of course, much of us would suffer even a much worse plight if it were to happen to us. But then, when they came, he could clearly see what was needed to be done, and he was in a hurry because he knew that he's not going to be there for long. So in that condition, so obviously when he applied certain drastic measures in their molding or transformation or totally recasting their personality, so to say, it was too much for many of them. But then, this was the pain he felt. It appeared like that, but really, in and through it also constantly his own brilliance that shone forth. And as far as these relationships are all concerned, they appeared to be human in one sense, but then if you go deeper into that, they all seem to be exhibits or modes of the God or Supreme's love for mankind in these various forms, as if to leave certain samples or certain types whereby they could really understand how it is. Then, the other aspect, what about his taste for love for ice cream, sauce, etc.? Are they not human? Because it seems he would very liberally pour the Tabasco sauce whenever he would have his breakfast or whatever it is. And when he was served pickles, he would lick his fingers. These are all kind of unthinkable in probably America those days and maybe today also. Then once he stole the cream from the icebox of Home of Truth and consumed the whole of it before breakfast. And he saw many of he was taken to operas, etc. He would laugh and laugh so hilariously. Someone said that, I have never seen anyone laughing so much. And Goodwin writes, sadly, the Swami laughed more at the wicked parts. For him, it was all play. See, that's what I'm saying. The way we relate to good, bad, wicked, etc. When a person who has realized that he was one with God, he was verily the Atman. People often talk about his famous speech at the Parliament of Religions. Sisters and Brothers of America. Several thousand people gave a standing ovation or clap and all that. Were there those words? Far better expressions have been used infinite number of times. But because of his connectedness with that supreme oneness, when he could raise himself to a different level, because he had postponed Several times the invitation to speak, later, finally it was no longer possible to postpone. Very reluctantly he came up, praying mentally to Mother Saraswati. Suddenly he had uplifted himself to such a level, for a moment he could connect with the entire audience at a supersensuous level. And that is what brought about that kind of a response from the audience, not the words. Sisters and brothers, what's so great about those two words? Many people have used such expressions, even far better expressions. Because you could connect with the audience at a supersensuous level, the response was very, very different. So again, they say perhaps again in a Ridgely manner. Now, he could be quite impatient. Suddenly he would, perhaps others were still sitting, should get up from dinner for a stroll. Then somebody would announce, probably there is ice cream, and that too chocolate, and immediately he'll come back and sit. So, how do you discuss about all this? Are they not human? Now, the fact is, there's an extraordinary touch to all these incidents also, because 100 years later, nobody is going to remember whether we liked pickles or ice cream. But still they are remembering about Swamiji and discussing it. That itself shows that it was of a totally different nature. Even his love for ice cream, even for the ordinary, common things of the world, so to say. In all this, it appears he was again and again trying to tie himself in some way or other to something at the earthly level. Because this is a common feature of Thakur Ma and Swamiji. Sri Ramakrishna also had to take the help of, I will take a little water, I will take a little sandesh or something. Otherwise, he could never come down from that transcendental region. He was always in that state of Advaitic oneness. So just to come down, to be part of this earth, to be part of this humanity, you have to take recourse to something tiny, something earthly, so to say. That is how he could relate. Mother also. That's why Thakur himself showed her Radhi. Quite a few of them had asked, what is this, Mother? Thakur was always immersed in samadhi or that kind of God consciousness. You are always busy with Radhi. For most people should say, we are women, what can we do? That is how we are. But a rare one, she had said, this moment I can cut asunder all these ties and simply soar high. I am deliberately accepting all this. That's why towards the end of her life, Radhi was so dear to her, she couldn't bear her presence. When she was very ill at Udbodhan, and I think Radhu came and said, no, why they are here? Let them go away to Jairam, but immediately. They should not stay here. Then Radhu and others said, what people will say if we go away now? We will go and hide ourselves somewhere. We will not come before her. For Radhu, for whom no one could think of mother staying even for a minute without seeing her, she says, let her go away. So probably, in the same way, somewhere someone wrote, Maya could not bind two people down, because when he tried to bind Nagmashai, he became so small, finally he could escape through that ropes and he could never bind it. Swamiji expanded, it became so huge, the rope was not enough. So probably these are all, in some way or other, because Sri Ramakrishna clearly said, the moment he knows who he is, he will not stay on this earth. So towards the end, just last few days before, someone asked, Swamiji, do you know who you are? He gravely said yes. Then they knew that he will not be with them much longer. So, that is, he, in a beautiful letter, most probably to Joe, he writes sometime, I think in April 1900 or so, I have bundled my belongings. I am waiting for the deliverer. Oh Shiva, I am waiting for the deliverer. She writes, Jo, after all, I am that small boy who used to sit with rapt wonder at the feet of the Saint Dakshineshwar. So this doing good, etc., they are all superimpositions. So he was slowly, unraveling the mystery of his own life, how he came. Because, it was a deliberate kind of superimposition on him by Sri Ramakrishna. When he had the Nirvikalpa Samadhi, then he was pestering him for a long time, pestering Sri Ramakrishna. When he had that experience, then afterwards when he came down to offer pranams to Sri Ramakrishna, Thakur said, yes, you have had it, but this experience would remain locked and the key will be with me. It will be open to you after you do mother's work. You have to do mother's work. So it was a veil, so to say, so deftly put on him by Sri Ramakrishna so that he would stay on this earth. Because immediately after that also, he tried hard to get back that. He went to Pahari Baba, he went everywhere. Several times he tried to be initiated by Pahari Baba. Every time, I think, in one biography it is written, 21 times Sri Ramakrishna appeared before him to say not to go that path. He would have been lost for humanity then and there. Because he needed only just trickles, just a kindling, something. Immediately he would have given up his body. So somehow Sri Ramakrishna cajoled and made him forget. And in Kanyakumari, he really got a vision as to what he was to do. So, all these things, what all happened after that, because in Kanyakumari, he clearly got a vision as to what was it to do, his mission for India, his mission for the West, how he is going to be the rest of his life. Probably the entire details are not revealed anywhere, but it's very clear that was the place where he really came down to the earthly level. Because otherwise, in his life, it has all been always a struggle to come down from that great heights of the Advaitic oneness or experience or the tendency to our level and stay connected and be there and be part of all that. So afterwards, that's why you will see in his life also two distinct phases, so to say. Almost up to that, those wanderings that time, ending in his the wonderful visions he had at Kanyakumari. Up to that, he was constantly again and again trying to shed off this forceful coming onto earth for the mission of Sri Ramakrishna and soar to that Advaitic heights constantly. Then after that, he was totally different, so to say. In fact, even to his own disciples like Virajananda, who are also given to, just like their guru, given to deep spells of meditation for hours. He said, you have wasted so many lives. Why not give up one life for the sake of others? If you think of mukti, your own mukti, you will go to hell. Think of others, mukti you will get immediately. Again, he himself had to cajole them because Virajanandas were not to be fooled so easily. They were themselves given to tremendous idea of sadhana. So, afterwards, again, this phase lasted quite some years. He's going to the West, the amount of work he did and coming back, rousing the nation. Again, it was a big struggle because his own brother disciples opposed him because they were all trained by Sri Ramakrishna together. He talked only of God realizations. What are you telling us? So it was a great struggle. But then, by the time he had been completely kind of in that make-believe world where he was made to participate. So these are all perhaps efforts. They were not really his real nature. But then he had to be like that. He had to appear human. He had to participate. So that, there is some connectedness with the rest of the humanity. As ordinary mortals like us, we can come and relate to him in some way or other. Find out after all. That's why, even if you look at this Ramakrishna, this advent also, otherwise, after some years, maybe some hundreds of years later, So much is written, so much of Purana, so much of construction, so much of about their lives, and all that is alaukik or supernatural would come into play, we'll completely kind of lose track. We can only keep them on a high pedestal and offer flowers and sandal paste, etc. But at least even now, in this Ramakrishna tradition, we are able to relate to such personalities, and there is something even in our life of sadhana. We feel that yes, what they did, at least 1,000th of which we can do. That kind of feeling, that kind of relatedness is there. So probably, it's all part of the same scheme, Ramakrishna, Mother and Swamiji. So all these incidents which we again and again come across in Swamiji's life, all this so-called his humanness, yes, they are not only that, you see, because of his extraordinary divinity, whatever he did at the human level also was an extraordinary level. The love he had for his disciples is something which it cannot be replicated that way. We can only do a fraction of it. The way he could laugh hilariously, we can only do a fraction of it. Can we really laugh hilariously at wicked parts of an opera? So, in that also he has shown the highest pinnacle, how it is possible, in that also. That is because of the immensity or the extraordinariness of his personality. But then all these give us some ray of hope. Yes, it is like that. He was also human. He also liked ice cream. He also did all that in small way. So, Sister Christine, she writes beautifully in the introduction, to her reminiscences. She writes, at long intervals of time, a being finds his way into this planet. He is undoubtedly a wanderer from another sphere, who brings along with him to this sorrowful world some of the glory, shine, and the radiance of the far distant region from which he came. He walks among us, but he does not belong to this place. He is a traveler. He tarries for a night. So that is how she begins her reminiscences. There are people who had lived so closely, so they knew who he was. Although they also saw his humanness as well as divine personality, yet because of his training, because he slowly uplifted them, they could clearly see and get a perspective of who he was, what he was, and so on. So, in whatever way we get attracted to Swamiji, largely it begins at the level when we somehow feel that, yes, there is a little humanness in Swamiji, because his personality only becomes so endearing, so attractive to us. But then as we go deeper, slowly we are able to unravel and understand the deeper dimensions of his personality. And finally, when we are deeply into that kind of a pursuit, that kind of a search, that kind of a sadhana, slowly we get glimpses of his extraordinary divinity also. And that is where the real culmination, because if you understand Swamiji only for this small little humanness, we have missed the entire plot. Its whole life is gone. But slowly, in and through all that, it's as if, there's a very famous, Maharaj has done a PhD on Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's philosophy. They say, of course it's in Bengali, Maghur Macher Jol Jyoti Mer Kol Bol Hari Bol. So, these are things that is promised for those who come for Kirtan. It's a special type of fish in Bengal called Maghur Mach, very famous, I believe it is delicious, I have never tasted. So, he says that will be given. What is the lap of a young woman? Rolling on ground in ecstasy. And Bol Hari Bol. So, like that, Swamiji seems to lure us, any innumerable people all over the world, east or west, it is apparent that a trace of humanness. But then if we really take to him seriously, in earnestness, as we evolve, as we go deeper, then we understand the divine nature of his personality, and that is where our real growth in spiritual life would really happen. Thank you very much. Anything they would like to ask? Some 5 minutes time. Any questions? If you have another, 5 minutes you have time. Yes?
I just wanted to comment that in
in spite of him, Swamiji being such an epitome of a sannyasi, he had so much love for his own mother.
Yeah, see, that is because, he had embraced the entire humanity, you can say. So in that sense, his mother is also part of the universe in one sense. Again, there's a little touch of that humanness, you can say. When we saw his such feelings for his own mother, probably, they all suffered so much, from a... See, if we are born in a poor family, there's one thing. But having enjoyed so much of affluence, and then become virtually paupers, and they were even trying to throw them out of the very house where they have entertained all those relatives. Obviously, it was something he could not just keep. Again, that spirit that he wouldn't take it lying down. And finally, he managed to win that lawsuit also. And so in a small way, he wanted to perhaps do her. And yes, anyone else?
Maharaj really painted a beautiful picture for us today. Really, Swamiji came alive. And it's really no joke who Swamiji was. I know in my own life, 50 years ago, I read Swamiji and my whole life was changed. That power, it just kind of enters into you. So, Maharaj, thank you so much. We hear so many deep philosophical talks that don't move us very much. And then we hear something about, because really, it's the personality. I've always said this, that Sri Ramakrishna, Holy Mother, Swamiji, that it's the personality that attracts us, that love that comes through. So we really felt it today, Maharaj. So really very appreciative that you could come and speak to us. Next Sunday, Swami Bhaskwaranandaji will speak on life is a journey, not a destination. So that should be a very interesting talk. Everyone is invited for that. We have lunch now for everyone. And Maharaj, did your devotees come?
Yeah.
Will she sing something?
Oh, yes.
Okay. What is her name?
Parna Sarkar.
Parna Sarkar. Swamiji is saying what a wonderful singer she is. So we'll request her to sing something, and then we invite everyone to join us for lunch in the basement.
Can I sing a mother's song?
Yeah.
চমকে রূপ
চমকে রূপরাশি অনন্ত আধার কোলে মহালির বাঁধে লোলে মা 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 গো অনন্ত আধার কোলে মহানির বাণী লোলে চির শান্তি পরিমল অবিরল যায় চলে অনন্ত আধার কোলে মহানির্বাণী লোলে চির শান্তি পরিমল তাই যোগে ধ্যান তাই যোগী ধ্যান ধরে হয়ে গিরে গুহাবাসী নিবিড় আধারে মাত চমকে মহাকাল রূপ ধরি আধার বসন করি মহাকাল রূপ ধরি আধার বসন করি সমাধি মন্দিরে তোমা কে তুমি গো একা বসে মহাকাল রূপ ধরি আধার বসন করি সমাধি মন্দিরে তোমা কে তুমি গো একা বসে অভয় পদ কমলে প্রেমের বিজলি খেলে মা 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 গো অভয় পদ কমলে